What they want to do is kind of push Iran back to a place where instead of a couple of days to enrich to weapon grade, they're going to need many, many months. This is a centrifuge program, and so you can't eliminate it. Iran was developing a capability to be able to make nuclear weapons rather quickly. I mean, and there's two parts to making a nuclear weapon. One is called the nuclear explosive material. In the case of Iran, it's called weapon grade uranium. And it was developing an enrichment program that was starting to produce kind of almost what you call a precursor of weapon grade uranium, 60%. And the 60% enriched uranium is 99% of the way to the weapon grade. Over the last couple of years, Iran's put together this capability to be able to make weapon grade uranium very quickly and to make lots of it.
How close do you think in time were they to being able to build a bomb, and how many do you think they could make at this moment?
They could produce weapon grade uranium within a few days, enough for a bomb. They could have enough for, let's say, 10 to 12 nuclear weapons in a month. I think they need about 6 months to actually make the nuclear weapon, and they have some challenges to finishing up the design and the development steps. So I think 6 months is what they would need. The enriched uranium can come and go. So you do want to get rid of the 60%, but you really do need to destroy the centrifuges themselves because, as I said, they can make the same enriched uranium again. Iran took a path that led Israel to move forward and strike. And so I expected it. I didn't expect it last night. But it makes sense it was last night when you think that they also know they have to have a surprise. Iran's announced that 6 nuclear scientists were killed. It looks like they're trying to kill the brains and then go after some of the facilities that they know about to probably to destroy equipment and targeting particularly equipment that has to be imported, where Iran just can't go and order it from domestic industries. It actually has to try to find a supplier overseas and smuggle the equipment in despite all these sanctions. And again, it's to set them back. Kind of Iran's been trying to shrink the time frames. Now Israel wants to expand them.
You can see the strategy of decapitating the program by killing the scientists. I mean, you yourself are a nuclear physicist, I believe.
Yeah, a physicist I was in.
How does that make you feel about that doctrine, about that tactic?
I'm clearly uncomfortable because where does it end? I mean, you do it to them, they do it to you. I mean, it sets precedent. Russia does it to the U.S. U.S. isn't going to do it to Russia, but you never know. So I mean, it just, I think it's not a good precedent. I don't know how else to put it, and one has to wonder about its effectiveness. I mean, yeah, maybe if, let's say, Oppenheimer and the Manhattan Project had been assassinated by Germany, would that have stopped the bomb program? I would argue no. I mean, his skill was as a manager principally, but there's other managers.